So what did Machiavelli achieve? What were his actual accomplishments? Did he accomplish all he set out to do, to rewrite or to write a new moral code for political life, to found a new political continent, as he speaks about, to found new modes and orders along the lines of Columbus? Did he achieve this? First of all, one should not and cannot underestimate his unprecedented break with both classical and biblical antiquity. More than anyone else before him, and perhaps more than anyone else since, he sought to liberate politics from ecclesiastical control. The new prince, as we've seen, must know how to use religion, but needs to learn how not to be used by religion. Must not become a dupe of the religious. He must know how to use religious passions and sentiments, but not be used by them. Politics must become a purely worldly affair. It should not be limited or constrained by any transcendent standards or moral laws that do not derive from politics itself, whether a law of God or some kind of transcendent moral order or code. Machiavelli's warning, we might say today, to the religious right, or his critique of the religious right, we cannot make politics conform to transcendent moral law. But not only did Machiavelli bring a new worldliness to politics, he also introduced a new kind of populism, you might say. Plato and Aristotle imagined aristocratic republics that would invest power in an aristocracy of education and virtue. Machiavelli deliberately seeks to enlist the power of the people against aristocracies of education and virtue. He is a kind of proto-democrat almost, who sought to recreate, not through accident and chance, but through planning and design, a new kind of republic in the modern world. The republic that Machiavelli imagined, and it's interesting, while he tells us he's only going to the effectual truth of things and not the imagination of it, nevertheless, Machiavelli does himself imagine a new kind of regime, a new kind of republic in the modern world that would not be a city at peace, but would be a city at war. It would be armed and expansive. Machiavelli's republic feeds on conflict, on war, and conquest. It is aggressive and imperialistic. Does it sound familiar? Is it us? In fact, if you look at a brilliant article, I think, in this week's New Republic by Robert Kagan called Cowboy Nation, Kagan demonstrates, I think, with a great deal of conviction that the American Republic, from its onset, has been expansive, aggressive, imperialistic, from the conquest of the territories, the expropriation of the Native Americans, the acquisition of Louisiana, wars of liberation against Mexico and Spain and so on, well into the 20th and now the 21st century. An aggressive, expansive, imperialistic republic. That, he says, has been our history. And what it should say, what it doesn't quite say, I think, is that it has been this history not because it is American, but because it is a republic, because of its regime type, its regime character. That kind of behavior seems perhaps to be built into the natures of republic. It was Machiavelli's admiration for the politics, what someone once called the lupine politics, the wolf-like politics of Republican Rome, that led him to understand that all social and moral goods have been established by morally questionable means. have we become, or have we always been, Machiavelli's republic, Machiavelli's desire? Think about that when you're in your sections or writing your papers. And you will get those paper topics on Wednesday, by the way. And finally, Machiavelli is the author of a new amoral realism. By whatever means necessary, I think is his motto, or should be his motto. By whatever means necessary. And oddly, he claims to be merely stating out loud, merely stating aloud what all writers have known all along. Bless you. It is necessary, he says, for the prince to know well how to use the beast and the man. He writes, this role, he says, was taught covertly by ancient writers. It was taught covertly by ancient writers, he says in chapter 18. The idea then that Machiavelli is doing no more than saying openly and overtly what ancient writers had wrapped in parable and enigma and myth says something about Machiavelli's new political science. What was previously taught only subtly and in private will now be taught openly and in public. What was once available only to a few will now be available to all. Perhaps more than anything else, Machiavelli's new openness, his readiness to challenge received authority, and his willingness to consider authority as self-created, as self-made, rather than bestowed by either nature or grace, is what fundamentally constitutes his modernity. So I'm going to leave it on that note, and on Wednesday we will begin the study of one of Machiavelli's greatest and most profound disciples in the modern world, a man by the name of Thomas Hobbes.